Welcome, everyone, and thanks for joining our session, Path to Cloud, Creating Your Own Roadmap. After some brief introductions, we'll talk about why we're here as a group, and we'll talk a little bit about how Elire envisions a path to cloud, a PeopleSoft path to cloud, from starting in PeopleSoft and that journey to the Oracle Cloud products. We'll do that in a framework that will introduce around people, processes, and systems, and hopefully that will be a way for everybody who is currently on PeopleSoft to think about that journey and be better prepared for that process. And we're going to end with some great takeaways on what you can do in PeopleSoft today to help your organization tomorrow. And if you can go to the next slide, introduction. So I'm Chris Kostix. I am one of the founding partners at Elire. Elire got its start back in 2005, and we were primarily a PeopleSoft organization. I used to work at PeopleSoft. Over the years, we've transitioned, and I now oversee our cloud delivery practice areas. And so cloud HCM, ERP, supply chain, and EPM roll up to me. Jeff, if you could introduce yourself.
Yeah, thanks, Chris, and good afternoon, everyone. My name is Jeff Hilliard. I'm a partner with Elire, and I lead our on-premise Center of Excellence, which includes a big part of that is PeopleSoft. So looking forward to talking about the relevancy in PeopleSoft as we discuss the roadmap to cloud. Richard, can you introduce yourself?
Yeah, thanks, Jeff. My name is Richard Merrill. I'm also a partner with Elire, and I'm the head of service delivery, which basically includes all the client-facing projects that we work so hard to deliver year after year. And in addition to that, I am also responsible for a team of folks who work on strategy, process improvement, change management, supporting testing. And so, my folks work very closely with Jeff and Chris's teams in order to make, implementations, upgrades successful. Now I'll throw it back to Chris.
Thanks, Richard and Jeff. So why are we here? And let's go to the next slide. Well, Jeff, Richard, and I are here because like we said, we're a delivery organization. We help PeopleSoft clients. We help cloud organizations. We got our start, like I mentioned before, doing PeopleSoft implementations, and we've helped a lot of organizations move from PeopleSoft to cloud. And you can see some of the stats up there, but we've built a lot of accelerators to really help organizations make that cloud transition journey easier, especially from PeopleSoft. Now, so what brings you here today? You may be on PeopleSoft 9.2, and if you're on 9.2, are you staying relatively current? For those who are current, are you leveraging all relevant features and functions and the different functionality that's being introduced with different PUM updates? Do you have the plan to moving to cloud? Some of you may have already even started on that journey to cloud. What is that plan? So we're going to help and hopefully have pieces of good information for anybody along those different areas. If you go to the next slide, we'll talk a little bit now about the path to cloud and how we envision this at Elire. So at Elire, we consider a cloud journey in a number of days. So many of you who have been part of large software transformations have probably heard of day 2. That's after you've been live and you are operational. We've taken that analogy down to day 0, and I'm going to start there as we explain. Day 0 is when you're currently still on PeopleSoft, your existing applications, your back office systems. And really what we want to talk about today is all of the things that you can be doing while you're on day 0, while you're currently on PeopleSoft, that starts preparing you and maturing your organization to be ready for day 1. When I think about day 1, that's the initial implementation of a cloud application. Cloud implementations are quite different than on-premise implementations. A lot of similarities, but there are a lot of differences. And day 1 is all about laying that foundation that will set you up for a fully optimized organization. And after you've had that initial implementation, that's where day 2 comes along, and you really optimize. You add new features, add new modules, expand your footprint, or you optimize existing business processes that you implemented in cloud. But what we're going to be talking about today is really our day 0 to day 1, and how do you better prepare for that initial implementation. And to blow this out a little further, we have a number of areas. If you remember when we first started this conversation, I talked about, are you on 9.2? Are you optimized? What are some of the things that you can be doing if you're on 9.2 to become optimized? Do you have a roadmap? There's a lot of different pieces that you can be taking advantage of, and Jeff's going to talk about that towards the end. But really, like I mentioned, we're going to be focusing on that left-hand side, boxes 1 through 4, and really trying to get into that initial implementation. Now I'll hand it over to Richard for Path to Cloud Readiness.
Thanks, Chris. I do appreciate that. So Path to Cloud Readiness, this is really about ensuring a smooth journey from day 0 to day 1. So, you know, Chris just laid that out nicely. What's on day 0, what's on day 1. As an organization, what can you do to ensure that that journey is going to be as smooth as possible? And we'd like you to think about this concept of conducting a cloud readiness assessment. Now, this assessment includes 12 different criteria, and we'll be talking a lot about these criteria in the rest of the presentation, kind of diving into them and explaining them just a little bit. But the concept here is that you want to ask yourself a series of questions to determine your overall level of maturity and see where you rate on these different criteria. The more mature you are, the smoother that journey is going to be. The less mature you are, then that points out some areas where you might have some work. And so we just want to sort of introduce the concept on this slide as the concept of conducting a cloud readiness assessment by asking a set of questions across these 12 different criteria. And again, we'll be diving into the more specifics of that in a few minutes. But the reason you want to do that type of a readiness scorecard and why does it matter is, you know, we really find that cloud transformation is more comprehensive than most people think, right? These are big, complicated projects, and you want to ensure your success. And one way to ensure your success is to be a little more comprehensive, a little more holistic in determining the skills criteria of your company. And, you know, as you use a scorecard like this, you can really understand where are you maybe not as mature as you'd like to be? Are there certain processes or systems or people capabilities that you know, maybe have gotten in the way of success of other projects? And it's now time to put some effort to improving that maturity so that this project or these series of projects to go from day 0 to 1 will be a little more successful. And of course, there's another benefit or set of benefits of doing this type of assessment, which is making sure everyone's marching in the same direction, that you've aligned expectations. And that's going to improve likelihood of the success of go live, but it's also going to ensure that you're actually getting the value that you hope to achieve from this type of an investment. And then maybe streamline that journey and get you there a little quicker. So at a high level, that's sort of what is the assessment and why do you want to do it? And what we're going to do now is sort of dive into those different criteria. Again, there's 12 different criteria. We've broken them into people, process, and systems. So we'll talk about them in different groups. And again, these are criteria we'd love for you to think about while you're still in day 0 and find those areas where maybe you're not as mature as you could be. And then think about what you could do to improve that level of maturity, because it's going to make that journey to day 1 go a little bit smoother. So the first category we want to talk about is people readiness. You know, it's going to take a team to get you from day 0 to day 1, and teams need motivation, teams need structure, teams need the right skills to succeed. So we have some criteria along those lines for you to think about. And the first one is motivation readiness. You know, as part of your own self-examination as an organization, we really recommend you unearth what are the core drivers and what are the guiding principles behind this type of project? Do you have a clear set of strategic drivers? And we're going to talk about these a little bit on the next page. If you're wondering, well, what is a strategic driver? We'll get into that. But, do you know what your strategic drivers are? Does everyone else in the organization know what they are? If you have to make decisions, how do you make decisions? What criteria do you use? Do you know who your stakeholders are? Are they bought in? Is everyone marching in the same order? And do you have guiding principles to keep everyone aligned? If you think about that, you may have struggled in some of these areas in the past and you're not quite as mature as maybe you could be, and getting a little more maturity will make it an easier journey. But let's dive into what do we mean real quickly by strategic drivers and decision criteria. So strategic drivers are really the why. Why are you going to do this project? Maybe you're trying to reduce your technology or infrastructure costs. Maybe you have obsolete systems or systems moving out of support. Maybe you want to radically transform your business processes. But we really encourage you as an organization to think about what are your strategic drivers. And if you don't know what they are, or maybe only a few people in the organization know what they are, then you're probably not as mature as you should be, and having better definition and better publication of these kind of drivers is really going to help get alignment and help motivate the team. Also, you're going to have to make decisions. And how do you make decisions as an organization? Do you make decisions based on the best fit gap or what saves you the most money, right? So how do you make decisions? Is everyone aware of how you make decisions? And is everyone using the same criteria to make decisions? Again, that really speaks to improving your maturity, if you can answer yes to that. Now, do they have a framework in place for not only the project team, but a steering committee? Does that governance framework include a change control process? So if you're making a decision and you're changing scope or changing requirements, how do you make that decision and how does it infiltrate its way through all the different aspects of the project? Are your stakeholders engaged? Did you identify them, but then actually not engage them? And then we talked about strategic drivers. Do you have metrics in place to sort of measure those drivers? And are you reporting them? Are you baselining them? Right? If these are things you've struggled with in the past, then maybe you're not as mature as you'd like to be. And thinking about improving some of these areas of maturity will make your journey to cloud smoother. The final people one is resource planning. Projects like this need lots of people. They have different roles. Different roles need to be identified to work on the project, different roles to support the legacy app while you're working on the project, different roles for supporting the app once you go live. Do you have them all identified, and do you know who is going to fill each of those roles? And once you've identified who fills the role, do they have the right skills? And if they don't have the right skills, are there gaps? And if there are gaps, how are you going to close them? Do you have a plan to get training and certification? So again, part of this readiness assessment, or the core of the readiness assessment, is really asking yourself a series of these types of questions to determine your overall level of maturity. And again, it will lead to a more successful project. The next set of criteria are around process and process readiness, because projects like this represent unique opportunities to get to best practices. Maybe you have a lot of processes that aren't aligned, that have a lot of manual work around. Maybe you're still swimming in a lot of paper. Projects like this can really help eliminate that if you assess these different criteria and figure out what you want to accomplish. The first criteria is a change management readiness. We really recommend you master change in order to accelerate adoption to cloud. So again, I'll ask you to think about past projects. Did you have a change management strategy? Which means, were you aware of how you were going to train people? Did you know how you were going to communicate to them? did you think about the impact as you make your journey? You know, you maybe have a process that's in PeopleSoft today. Maybe the part of the process will be in PeopleSoft tomorrow, part of it will be in the cloud. Maybe in 2 years, the whole thing is in the cloud, right? As you're changing your systems, you're changing your processes and impacting people along the way. Do you really understand all those impacts? And then do you have resources in place to help people manage all this change? And what's your organization like? Is your organization good at accepting change? The next two criteria we sort of put together, which is business processing and gap analysis. Do you understand your business processes? You know, again, I talked about certain processes might start in one system and end in another. Do you really understand that? And do you have all the requirements defined? And will the new system meet those requirements, or are there gaps? And if there's gaps, how are you going to close them? And when you think about closing those gaps, how does that align to your strategic drivers? So again, if you're not answering yes to a lot of these questions, or maybe you're unsure, it means you have a little less maturity. And we'd recommend focusing on some of that. But let's dive a little more into requirements, because you're in day zero, you're thinking about moving to the cloud. And so what kind of requirements do you need? And we really recommend a healthy balance. You don't want them too high. You know, the requirement shouldn't be, I need to issue payroll, or I need to write a journal. But it also doesn't have to be to the nth degree. That type of detail is going to be important later when you're actually designing, configuring, and implementing. But right now, when you're in day zero and you're just thinking about how to get to cloud, you need a better mix, a better balance of requirements. And it's not just the system and process requirements. It's you need to prioritize other requirements that impact how cloud is going to be set up. Requirements that dictate how many legal entities you have, or the volume of data and its cleanup considerations, or maybe requirements around architecture needs, right? So all, in addition to process and functional requirements, you need all of these requirements identified. And then, of course, you're going to have requirements that might be unique to your organization and that don't fit with the cloud structure. So you may have to do a POC, or a proof of concept, to figure out exactly how it's going to work in cloud. You may realize that you cannot do it in cloud and you need to look beyond cloud for a point solution. Or maybe it's something you can do in cloud, but you just need to use some of the cloud capabilities that Jeff will be talking about later, that help you overcome some of that uniqueness, right? And of course, if you do end up going to a third-party point solution, make sure those requirements are known as well. Next criteria is really around deployment strategy readiness. And here we recommend tailoring your migration approach for maximum impact. And deployment approach, and we'll talk a little bit more on the next page, but deployment approach is all about how you're going to get there. Is it going to be big bang? Is it going to be incremental? How much process change are you looking to achieve? Is it going to be transformational or not so much? And do you understand all the project timelines and milestones to get from day 0 to 1? And do you understand the role of the consulting partner? And so just diving into that a little bit, you know, again, that deployment approach is really about understanding, will you go big bang or will you coexist? And coexist means you do some things on-prem and some things in the cloud. And we really recommend you sort of figure this out before taking that first step. And then as part of your deployment, how much transformation are you looking to achieve? And do you have alignment on that? Is everyone in HR, finance, IT agreeing on the amount of transformation that should be included? And if you are looking at more complete transformation, what are all the other internal and external factors to consider? Are there competing initiatives? Are there accounting considerations? Are there compliance considerations, right? Infrastructure considerations. So really laying out and being able to answer a lot of these questions. The more questions you can answer, the more successful that project's going to be. And then I'm going to throw it back to Chris, who's going to talk a little bit about the nature of the consulting partnership before discussing some of the more additional criteria.
Yeah, thanks, Richard. And what I wanted to add on the consulting partnership piece is, as we oversee a lot of cloud projects, and one of the keys of going into that cloud project is, one of the key success factors is when the organization has thought about or considered the specific role that your consulting system implementer will actually hold. You may have a great relationship with your consulting partner currently, but that may be only a PeopleSoft expertise. They may not have cloud expertise. So this may be an opportunity to find a new consulting partner, or maybe it may force you to find a new consulting partner, and really giving the consulting partner that you intend to work with an understanding of the approach that you want to take. Are you going to be backfilling roles and you're going to be working shoulder to shoulder with the consulting partner, or are you taking a more passive approach in implementation where you're expecting them to dictate or prescribe the approach to implementations? That really affects the overall structure, and it's good to set those expectations first. We know not everybody can backfill roles, but some of the largest organizations in the world have an approach to backfill existing roles within the organization so that those subject matter experts can work hand in hand on this large transformational project. If you could hit the next slide, thank you. System readiness. So Richard got to talk about people and processes, and we didn't even get into systems, and systems are a big piece of the whole puzzle. So I do want to hit on some of them. The pieces that Richard talked about are often not as considered as some of these important and crucial system pieces, but it is still very important. So I want to hit on infrastructure readiness. One of the biggest changes from PeopleSoft to Oracle Cloud is the integration ecosystem within that is offered within the SaaS-based products. Now, large organizations most likely have some kind of middleware platform like MQ or MuleSoft or something else. But a lot of organizations are using PeopleSoft, especially smaller organizations are using PeopleSoft to be able to push data out, transform the data, and orchestrate the movement of data. The integration broker is a great tool for that. The SaaS products do not have a tool that allows you to do that. There are point-to-point solutions that are pre-built within Oracle, and they work fantastic, like the Amex feed for expenses. That's a pre-built integration, and you can use just enter credentials and be able to do that integration within the SaaS platform. But oftentimes you're going to have to get data out of cloud, you're going to have to orchestrate it and put it somewhere. And the SaaS-based products don't have that. A lot of times organizations, when they start thinking about their movement to cloud, they don't consider the infrastructure that will be needed to support the future state cloud implementation, SaaS-based cloud implementation. So on this maturity criteria, it's knowing all of your integrations, your targets, and being able to have open communication with those targets and sources that you're getting data from, your infrastructure, the different tools and technologies that you will be using, because those tools will be, or potentially will be need to be updated. And then finally, how are you going to go about testing? And again, that goes to the different, especially third-party vendors, but understanding all of the different touch points and where that needs to be. Next topic is data conversion, and data conversion is one of the areas that I think gets overlooked more than any other area. It's also the most time-consuming, one of the most time-consuming pieces of a project, and again, most often underestimated. So it's a really critical thing to start thinking about data conversion. You can do that now. If you're currently in PeopleSoft, you can start thinking about data conversion readiness. And when you think about what you're moving into cloud, maybe it's a business process, maybe it's a series of modules, maybe it's an entire HR or ERP suite. What are the business processes or areas that you'll be implementing in cloud? And where does that source data live? Does it all live in PeopleSoft? Are there other systems that contain this information? Really getting an understanding of where your data is really important. You can do that now. Data quality is another huge area that is often well underestimated. I've been into many clients where they say their data is very clean, and we get there and we find out that they have all kinds of customizations, data in different spots, very not clean data. So data quality is a big area. An example of data quality and prep that you can be doing now is around areas like addresses. In PeopleSoft, the PS, when you add an address to somebody, you don't have to add a county. And the address doesn't actually have to be valid for it to be in the system. In Oracle Cloud, it does need to be valid. And to be able to get that data, to have all the counties and have valid address data, that's a big undertaking in and of itself. So being able to do some data cleansing on the data that will ultimately be moved into the cloud is something you can actually start now. And we can help along the way if you have questions on that. Another one is, what tools are you going to be using? Are you going to be using existing ETL tools within your organization? Does the vendor that you're planning on using to help you with this migration have tools? Have they done PeopleSoft to Oracle Cloud transformations? It's, we've done that for a lot of years at Elire, and we've built some great tools that take all the data out of PeopleSoft, put it exactly where it needs to be in cloud. And that's a big time-consuming process. So don't underestimate that. Often SIs will encourage you as the client to be responsible for extracting the data, cleansing it, and getting it into the format that is needed for cloud. And that's a big undertaking. Ideally, you'll be working with an SI that has tools that help you with that process, but just understand that that's a big amount of work. And finally, data archiving. Not all data is going to move to cloud. So if we take an example that's often hotly contested, is your worker or your employee data, and the historic best practice recommendation was to only move top of stack or your most recent employment data over to the cloud. And that means you have a bunch of other data that is not moving over to the cloud. Everything else, we've been at companies who have been in existence or historical data for 40 years of history in their employment records. And if you were to simply do that top of stack, the rest of that data needs to go somewhere. So what is your data archiving strategy around there? And just one more piece on that. I mentioned that historically best practice was to only pull top of stack. We've successfully converted many customers full entire employment history, and that's something that we feel it does not add a lot of risk if you plan appropriately. If you can hit the next slide, Richard. Finally, customizations. I love, everybody in PeopleSoft loves their customizations. With App Designer, you can really do anything, and oftentimes people did do anything just for the sake of doing it. Over the years, Jeff and his practice on the PeopleSoft organization at Elire have been helping organizations decustomize and trying to reduce so they can adopt and plumb updates more efficiently, quicker, and all those kind of things. But there's still a lot of customizations. You can do that in cloud or in PeopleSoft. Cloud has much more limited ability to customize. You can extend, but the customizations are a big piece. So we recommend really knowing your customizations, taking a look at them, understanding, is that a customization that's really strategic that we need, that doesn't fit the future business process, or is it a customization that we should look at decustomizing now and try to figure out a way to make our PeopleSoft system work in a more delivered way. It will help your current PeopleSoft, and it will help your cloud implementation in the future. Jeff's going to talk a lot more about customization, so I will actually right now turn it over to Jeff to dive into what you can do today in PeopleSoft to help your organization tomorrow.
Yeah, thanks, Chris. So what can you do today in PeopleSoft to help your org tomorrow? The next few slides revolve around a call to action, and the call to action is for all PeopleSoft customers, no matter where you are in your cloud journey, to continue to maximize your investment in PeopleSoft, and we'll talk about why we think that's important. So how to prepare for the journey during day zero. The slide that we're showing here is broken into 4 quadrants, and as we work through the different quadrants, we would ask that customers think about where their organization may be today, and also as we work through the different quadrants, consider doing some of the activities that we represent as we're moving from the left side to the right side of the page, being the left side being less mature organization, so that may not be on 9.2 or not optimized. Whereas on the right, it's an organization where you may be further optimized in PeopleSoft and may have already started a roadmap to the cloud. So again, if you could think about where your organization is today, and as well as consider doing some of these activities to get yourself more ready. So if you're on pre-9.2, starting in the left quadrant, certainly if you're haven't made the decision to go to 9.2, it's certainly worth considering looking at the cloud versus 9.2 and then doing an assessment for that. Elire offers services to conduct that assessment, and we've done many of those. So that will determine and will provide some good guidance as far as what we recommend as to whether to upgrade or possibly start your cloud journey. If you decide during that point you do want to stay on 9.2 or PeopleSoft and upgrade to 9.2, we recommend doing an upgrade readiness, which essentially is reviewing your current state, pre-9.2 footprint, understanding your customizations, and really coming up with a final scope of what you want to accomplish as part of your 9.2 upgrade. And hopefully that's, making yourself more optimized, removing customizations or decreasing the maintenance associated with those. Many customers have made the leap to 9.2, but they did more of a lift and shift. So a lot of customers are on 9.2, but they're not really taking advantage of all the new capabilities through the new PUM releases. So if you're on 9.2 and you're not staying current on PUM, or you're not implementing new functionality, coming up with a CDM strategy that really incorporates those things is important. Start to take on the new PUM tools and tools updates, and as you're doing so, continue to review your customizations, continue to remove those, replace those with new functionality. Get yourself more cloud ready as you're working through and optimizing your 9.2 investment. Moving to the top right quadrant, these are customers that are on 9.2, have stayed fairly current with their PUM and PeopleTools updates. What we encourage you to do is continue to take on new features. Things like Kibana and chatbots are just a couple of the new features that are coming out with new PUM releases. Start looking at ways to automate your processes. There's a lot of capabilities out there, particularly in the P2P space, whether it's around invoicing and OCR. There's a lot of ways to improve your processes today that will carry over into the cloud. Testing automation, if you're on PeopleSoft, obviously PTF is something you own. If you're not taking advantage of PTF, you really should be. So we encourage customers to do that. And as you move into the cloud, obviously that should be a part of your strategy as well. So if for customers that feel they're optimized and are considering a move to the cloud, consider doing a cloud roadmap. Richard mentioned in pretty good detail what we can offer from a scorecarding perspective. This will give you a general idea fairly quickly where you are in as far as readiness to go to the cloud. But it really takes a deeper roadmap in understanding your strategy. Richard mentioned, are you going to do a big bang approach? Are you going to do coexistence? Those type of things can be addressed as part of a larger roadmap effort. If you are going to do coexistence, which applications should go first, and what applications can remain on PeopleSoft? Is it something that is PeopleSoft at a place where you should consider moving PeopleSoft to the cloud, possibly on OCI and things like that? So all of these things can be part of a larger roadmap that Elire can help you with, and really set out a good foundation for that migration to the cloud. And then obviously we can start looking at the cloud itself, either doing some pilots or proof of concepts to really make sure your organization understands the cloud and its capabilities. Next slide, Richard. So why invest in PeopleSoft? That's one of the key theme I mentioned. The number one, the typical journey to cloud is a multi-year and often includes a coexistence approach, as we talked about a couple of different times. So investments in PeopleSoft will realize your value for your organization while you're still on the system. For the most customers and users really appreciate the PeopleSoft application. They understand it. If you're going to be changing your processes and making them more efficient and more cloud ready, why not do that on PeopleSoft? It'll just make that transition much easier. Where to invest? So we've mentioned a couple times, removing customizations will modernize your business now. Again, it's taking a look at what customizations you have, understanding why they're there, and can we remove those in PeopleSoft today, whether it's using delivered processes, that will carry it forth into the cloud. Is it making your customizations less impactful? So as you remain on PeopleSoft and take on new PUMs, it becomes less of an effort to maintain those customizations. Number two, PeopleSoft 9.2 PUM images continues to provide a wealth of new functionality, as we mentioned, to modernize your processes. With minimal effort for the most part. Now that you're on 9.2, keeping current with a PUM as you minimize your customizations, it's much less effort, particularly if you're taking on new features. It's just getting your organization ready for those changes, going through some test cycles and training and change management, and you're up and running. So. There's also functionality in PeopleSoft that has a similar functionality in the cloud. So there's some things we'll talk about on the next slide that really highlight those areas to kind of get your users more ready for that functionality that's coming. In summary, the work you do today in PeopleSoft prepares your people, processes, and systems for cloud tomorrow. That's the general idea. Next slide. So how do you do some of these? How do we know what customizations we have? If you don't have a good catalog of your current state customizations, one thing Elire offers is a proprietary customization identification tool where it's built directly in PeopleSoft technology. So it's built in App Designer. It essentially groups your customized online objects into customization buckets organized by the associated PeopleSoft component. So if obviously a delivered compare report is very cumbersome and doesn't really tell you how the customizations across various objects are linked. And this report essentially takes all the customized objects and really associates them to the business process, which kind of reveals a much cleaner and comprehensive view of all your online customizations. So it allows you to kind of really, work through those and understand them much cleaner, working with your IT department as well as your business, and really trying to revisit why we had this customization. Is it really needed going forward? So it's a tool that Elire can provide. That will quickly identify your customizations if you don't know what they are, and really start the discussions around what can we do with these going forward. Next slide. So leveraging new functionality, PeopleSoft has features which are available and expanded in the cloud. And here's some examples of those. Data and visualizations. In PeopleSoft, we're using Kibana, and PeopleSoft continues to deliver those visualizations in the Kibana dashboards. In the Oracle Cloud, it's Oracle Analytics. Chatbots within PeopleSoft, they continue to deliver things like Picasso, which is built on the Oracle Digital Assistant. And then in the cloud, it's Oracle Digital Assistants. Training now that UPK and PeopleSoft's no longer supported. So Oracle is encouraging PeopleSoft customers to now move their UPK content into the Oracle Guided Learning, or OGL, which is the same learning that's used in PeopleSoft, or I'm sorry, the Oracle Cloud as well. And we mentioned automated testing. So PTF obviously is the go-to tool in PeopleSoft. In the cloud, there's automated testing tools, as well as Elire offers a testing automation. Test success is something that Elire's built, so we can help you with automated testing once you go to the cloud. Build your cloud roadmap with PeopleSoft improvements in mind. So the idea to not stop to not invest in your PeopleSoft investment, as you're getting ready for your cloud. Continue to maximize all the features that are available there, as well as make it more efficient and more cloud ready. Adapt your people and processes by leveraging technology now versus waiting to be a modern organization. That's the idea. Again, the journey can be a few years, and your organization can really start preparing for that journey to the cloud now, and that's what we're encouraging customers to do. Next slide. So where do my PeopleSoft capabilities of today exist tomorrow in Oracle Cloud? We won't go through each of these in detail. Just a couple that I know PeopleSoft customers would be interested in. Number one, Application Designer, as Chris mentioned. It was easy to customize in PeopleSoft, and customers took full advantage of it. So in the cloud, it doesn't mean you can't do customizations or do bolt-on type things. Visual Builder is a hosted environment for application development infrastructure, and Apex is the cloud and on-premise development tool that can be used as well to kind of build out extensions to your functionality. Another one that's pretty common is customers have added fields or made customizations to records to capture different data elements in their PeopleSoft environment. There's things called flex fields that are offered in the cloud that really do the same thing. So what we're trying to point out here is the perception that there's no flexibility in the cloud. It really isn't reality. There's ways to extend that functionality and to meet help your organization meet requirements. With that, I'll pass it back to Richard.
Thank you, Jeff. And so in terms of a wrap up, what we want to really encourage you to think about, and it's, a message I've talked about, it's one that Chris and Jeff both talked about, it's all part of that same journey. We really recommend you consider the entire journey from on-prem, from day 0 to, fully implement it in the cloud day 2 to be part of that same journey. If you think about your PeopleSoft projects and PeopleSoft resources in one bucket, and your cloud projects and cloud resources in another bucket, that's really not a great approach. We really recommend you think of it all together, because as you just saw, the decisions you make in PeopleSoft can really impact that journey to cloud and make it a lot easier. And not to mention, you could get a lot of benefit from investing in PeopleSoft today, just short-term benefit, but you also get long-term benefit on your way to the cloud. Another thing to consider as we wrap up is conducting a cloud readiness assessment, right? We introduced this concept of 12 different criteria. Some of them are for people, some of them are for process, some of them are for systems. Asking yourself a series of questions to really determine your overall level of maturity. And the goal of that is to identify areas of weakness, areas that are less mature. Because as you think about developing a roadmap to go from on-prem to cloud, to go from day 0 to day 1, that roadmap could include mitigations for areas that are less mature, investments in areas that are less mature, right? In order to smooth that journey. All things you could be thinking about today while you're still on-prem. And what are some things you can immediately be thinking about? Things that you could do next week or even today. And one of those is prioritizing investments, to optimize PeopleSoft. It's going to help you get cost savings today. It's going to give you efficiencies today, but it's also going to better prepare your organization and they'll move to the cloud. You'd rather decustomize while you're still on PeopleSoft than try to figure it all out in the middle of an implementation. The other thing is that while you're on day 0, take the time to plan and align now. You're going to save a lot of pain, a lot of rework, a lot of miscommunication by conducting that type of readiness assessment, finding the areas that are less mature, coming up with specific ideas to improve the maturity, and then, putting those as prioritized projects, things that you could do today. And so with that, we really want to thank you for listening. Thank you from myself, from Chris, from Jeff, from the whole Elire team. If you want to find out more about A Journey to Cloud, you can contact us on all the socials that you see there on the screen. Follow us at Elire Inc. or visit our website, in which we have a special section, PS2 Cloud, where you can get a lot more information about this. So thank you all so much. We really do appreciate your attendance.
Thank you.